The asphalt bit cold through worn sneakers as Garrett Hayes walked the shoulder of Route 72, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets, breath fogging in the late afternoon air. His toolbox, the heavy one, the good one, sat abandoned in a locker 3 miles behind him, and the weight of that absence pressed harder than the metal ever had. A school bus rumbled past, brake lights flashing red at the intersection ahead. Kids pressed their faces to the windows, laughing at something he couldn't hear. Garrett turned his head away. Dried grease still clung under his fingernails despite 20 minutes of scrubbing in the gas station bathroom. The bathroom where he'd stood, hands braced against the sink, trying to figure out how to explain unemployment to an 8-year-old who still believed her father could fix anything. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, already knowing. Meadowbrook Elementary. Automated message. Your child's lunch account balance is overdue. Please remit payment to avoid. He silenced it mid-sentence. The strip mall to his right looked exactly like every other strip mall in Bristol, Connecticut: nail salon, vape shop, tax preparation office with dusty windows. A woman wheeling a stroller gave him a wide berth on the sidewalk. He didn't blame her. Men walking alone in work clothes at 3:30 on a Tuesday looked like trouble, like bad decisions, like the kind of father who picks his kid up late smelling like defeat. Hey, I'm really glad you're here. Be honest, have you eaten today? What did you have? Tell me that, your location, and the time. And if you're new, help me prove something wrong. My mother said drill stories would never reach 10,000 subscribers, but stories like this deserve to be heard. So don't leave without subscribing. It feels empty when you come in and leave without saying a word. Now, let's continue. Garrett crossed into the industrial district where the buildings sat low and gray against the winter sky. Empty parking lots. Chain-link fences. The kind of neighborhood that looked temporary even when it had been there 40 years. His apartment complex waited another mile east, past the rail yard, past the shuttered factory that used to make ball bearings before China made them cheaper. He thought about Nora waiting at the after-school program, probably drawing horses in that notebook she carried everywhere. She always drew the same horse, brown with a white star on its forehead, over and over, like if she got it perfect enough, it might become real. He'd promised her riding lessons once. Back when promises felt possible, the sound came before he understood what it was, low and mechanical, rolling across the sky like distant thunder, except the sky was clear. Garrett stopped walking. Looked up. Nothing but pale blue and the contrails of a passenger jet miles high. Then the sound doubled. Tripled. A deep rotary thump that vibrated in his chest. Other people heard it too. A man getting into his truck paused, door half open. A woman coming out of the liquor store shaded her eyes, scanning the horizon. Car alarms triggered in sequence down the block, one after another, like dominoes made of panic. Garrett turned a slow circle, trying to locate the source. That's when he saw them point. 2 black helicopters dropping fast over the tree line to the south, rotors chewing the air into submission. They weren't flying, they were falling with purpose, nose down, aggressive, the kind of descent that meant emergency or enforcement. The noise became everything. Birds exploded from the bare branches. The windows of the tax office rattled in their frames. People were shouting now. Phones came out. Someone screamed. The helicopters banked hard over the strip mall, so low Garrett could see the pilots through the windscreens, and then they were directly overhead, the downdraft hitting like a shockwave, ripping a sales sign off the vape shop and sending trash cans tumbling across the parking lot. Garrett dropped into a crouch, arms over his head, certain something had gone catastrophically wrong, certain he was about to watch. Metal and fuel rained down on civilian streets, but they didn't crash, they landed, right in the middle of the empty lot across from where he stood, the lot that used to be a carpet warehouse before it burned down in 2019, touching down in perfect synchronization, kicking up a storm of dust and old newspaper and plastic bags that swirled like a localized tornado. The rotors began to slow, but the engine stayed hot. Whining, ready, doors flew open before the skids fully settled. Men in dark tactical jackets jumped out, boots hitting pavement, moving with the kind of coordination that spoke military or federal or something Garrett had only seen in movies. 4 men from the first helicopter. 3 from the second. All of them scanning the area with sharp, urgent eyes. One of them cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted over the dying rotor wash, voice cutting through the mechanical scream. "Where's the boss?" Another man, taller, older, repeated it louder. "We need Garrett Hayes, now." Garrett's lungs forgot how to work his name. They just shouted his name into a crowd of strangers recording on cell phones while two military-grade helicopters sat idling 50 feet away. That he looked behind him, certain this was mistaken identity, certain someone else named Garrett Hayes existed and was supposed to be here instead, but when he turned back, one of the men was staring directly at him, pointing. "That's him. What do you think just happened? Drop your theory in the comments." The man moving toward Garrett wasn't running, but he wasn't walking either, something between urgency and control, the way someone approaches a spooked animal they need alive. His jacket bore no insignia, no badge, nothing to explain the authority radiating off him like heat. Garrett's feet stayed planted on the cracked sidewalk even as his brain screamed to move. His fingers curled into fists inside his pockets. Around him, the small crowd that had gathered pressed phones forward, recording everything, narrating in real time for followers who'd never believe this without video proof. "Sir, are you Garrett Hayes?" The man stopped 6 feet away, hands visible, palms forward. His voice carried a practiced calm that somehow made everything worse. Garrett's throat closed. He managed a nod. "We need you to come with us. Right now." The world tilted. Garrett took a step back, shoulder blades hitting the brick wall of the liquor store. What? Why? What did I? You're not in trouble." The man's eyes flicked to the growing audience, then back. "But we don't have time to explain here. Lives depend on this, Mr. Hayes. Yours included." Lives. The word detonated in Garrett's chest. His mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Nora. Something happened to Nora. But no, they'd have sent police, not helicopters. Maybe the shop. Maybe Vince Holloway had blamed him for something, fabricated evidence, turned a firing into a felony. "I have a daughter," Garrett heard himself say, voice barely audible over the idling rotors. "She's at school. I can't just disappear." The man's expression shifted, not softer, but different. Recognition maybe. Understanding. "How old?" 8. A pause. The man pulled a radio from his belt, spoke into it quickly. "Advise Unit 3 to coordinate with Meadowbrook Elementary. Child pickup, age 8, name," he looked at Garrett. "Nora. Nora Hayes. Nora Hayes. Full protective detail. Grandmother's house as secondary location if listed." Garrett's knees nearly buckled. They knew where his daughter went to school. They knew about his mother. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. "Who are you?" The question came out broken. "Federal Aviation Contractors. That's all I can say here." The man gestured toward the helicopters where the others waited, engines still hot. "Please, Mr. Hayes. We've been searching for you for 3 months. If we don't move now, a lot of people are going to die, and you're the only person who can stop it." The woman with the stroller from earlier was filming from behind a parked sedan. A teenager in a pizza delivery uniform stood frozen on the sidewalk, marinara sauce dripping from an overturned order at his feet. Everyone waiting for Garrett to do something. That he thought of Nora's face when he didn't show up on time. The way her shoulders would hunch, the way she'd pretend it didn't hurt. He thought of the $17 in his checking account. The apartment lease due in 12 days. The toolbox sitting in a locker he'd never open again. "If I get in that helicopter," Garrett said slowly, "where does it go?" "Massachusetts. Hanscom Air Force Base. 90 minutes, maybe less. Air Force Base." The words felt alien in his mouth. Garrett Hayes had never been on a military installation in his life. Had never been on any aircraft bigger than the Cessna his uncle used to crop dust cornfields back when crop dusting was still a thing. And if I don't? The man's jaw tightened. Then I failed my job. A critical safety system stays broken, and when the failure happens, and it will happen, Mr. Hayes, probably within 72 hours, the investigation will want to know why we couldn't convince you. 72 hours. 3 days. Garrett's hand started shaking. Behind the man, one of the other contractors was speaking urgently into a headset, nodding, then waving. Garrett couldn't hear the words, but the body language screamed hurry. "Your daughter's safe," the first man said quietly. "I give you my word. We have people at the school right now. Professional. Gentle. They'll tell her there's been a change of plans, that you'll call her soon. She'll be with your mother within the hour." Garrett wanted to ask how they knew his mother still picked Nora up on Tuesdays when he worked late. Wanted to ask how they'd found him walking on Route 72 at exactly this moment. Wanted to ask why a mechanic who couldn't afford his daughter's lunch account suddenly had federal contractors landing helicopters in abandoned lots, but the man was already turning, assuming cooperation, and Garrett's feet were moving before his brain approved the decision. The crowd parted. Someone whispered, "Is he arrested?" And someone else replied, "No badge," and a third voice said, "Record everything." Like this was content, like Garrett's life fragmenting in real time was entertainment. The wind from the rotors hit harder as he approached, flattening his jacket against his ribs, filling his mouth with the taste of jet fuel and hot metal. One of the contractors extended a hand to help him into the cabin. Garrett took it. The interior smelled like leather and electronics and the kind of money that made his entire existence feel like a rounding error. He dropped into a seat. The door slammed. The engine pitch changed immediately. Through the window, Garrett watched the crowd shrink as the helicopter lifted, phone still raised, still recording, still trying to make sense of what they'd witnessed. His reflection stared back from the curved glass. Same face. Same grease under the nails. But nothing about the man looking back felt familiar anymore. The contractor across from him leaned forward, shouting over the noise. "Mr. Hayes, before we land, I need to ask you something." Garrett nodded, numb. "Back in 2019, you did freelance work for a startup called Horizon Aerospace. Do you remember that?" The name hit like cold water. Garrett's eyes widened. That was 7 years ago. I barely worked there 2 months. 14 weeks. We checked. The man pulled a tablet from a case bolted to the wall, swiped it alive. You redesigned a turbine housing assembly. Made it 18% more efficient and 72% safer under catastrophic failure conditions. Garrett stared. He'd forgotten about Horizon. It had been a side job, cash under the table, something to cover Nora's medical bills when the insurance lapsed after his wife died. He'd fixed their design because it was broken, because leaving it broken felt wrong, because that's what you did when you understood how things worked. That design, the contractor continued, voice dropping lower, is now standard in emergency medical helicopters across 9 states. It's in news choppers. Police units. Coast Guard birds. The tablet turned toward him. On the screen, a schematic Garrett recognized, his modifications, his notes, his handwriting scanned and digitized. 3 days ago, a fleet inspection found metal fatigue in 70% of active units. The FAA grounded everything pending investigation. But we can't figure out why the fatigue's happening or how to fix it without breaking something else. The original engineer is dead. The company's been bought twice. All the documentation is incomplete. The helicopter banked hard. Garrett gripped the seat. You're the only person alive who understands how that system actually works, Mr. Hayes. And if we don't solve this in the next 72 hours, people are going to die when those helicopters fail mid-flight. Garrett's vision blurred. His hands. His design. His responsibility. Below them, Connecticut became a patchwork of highways and neighborhoods and lives that had nothing to do with turbine assemblies or metal fatigue or decisions made 7 years ago for grocery money. The contractor's radio crackled. A woman's voice, urgent. Base to Alpha 2, we have confirmation. The first unit just showed stress fractures during pre-flight. Boston Med Flight. They're grounding the entire fleet effective immediately. Static. Then another voice, deeper. That's 16 helicopters offline. Cardiac cases, trauma transfers, rural emergencies, all ground transport only until this is resolved. Garrett closed his eyes. Someone, somewhere, was having a heart attack right now. Someone's kid was bleeding out in a place ambulances couldn't reach fast enough. And the helicopters that could save them sat grounded because Garrett Hayes had walked away from a company 7 years ago without looking back. The contractor was watching him. Waiting. When we land, Garrett whispered, "What exactly do you need me to do?" The man's expression stayed neutral, but something shifted in his eyes. Relief, maybe. Or respect. "Fix what's broken, Mr. Hayes. Like you always do." The helicopter dropped lower, chasing the horizon toward answers Garrett didn't have and a responsibility he'd never asked for. What would you do in Garrett's position? Metal shrieked against metal as the impact gun slipped, jolting up Garrett's arm and sending a sting through his wrist. The whole shop turned to look for half a second, then the noise of Hawthorne Automotive swallowed the moment, air compressors hissing, classic rock humming low from a dusty radio, phones ringing at the front counter. Garrett shook out his hand, reset the socket, and went back to the suspension job. The Silverado on the lift above him groaned like it hated being helped. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, turning the oil sheen on the concrete floor into a dull mirror of boots and lug nuts and broken pieces. "Hayes." Vince Holloway's voice cut through the noise, sharp as a wrench dropped on bare toes. "You got a minute, boss?" The word "boss" rolled out like an inside joke only one person thought was funny. Garrett slid out from under the truck on the creeper, pushing himself up with a sigh. His back cracked, reminder that 38 felt a lot older when you've been hunched over engines since you were 15. Vince stood near the office doorway, bald cap backwards, belly stretching his Hawthorne Automotive polo. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah." Garrett wiped his hands on a rag and walked over, every step echoing with the tired rhythm of someone whose body knew this floor better than his own apartment. "In here," Vince said, tilting his head toward the cramped glass-walled office that looked out over the bay. "Got something we need to align on." The other mechanics pretended not to watch. Troy kept his head under a hood that didn't need him yet. Miguel fussed with a tire machine that worked just fine. Even the kid at the counter lingered near the doorway, paper in hand, listening without listening. Garrett stepped into the office. The smell changed immediately, less oil, more coffee and stale air freshener. A stack of inspection forms sat on the desk, neat piles that didn't match the chaos of the rest of the shop. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Vince dropped into his chair, which protested under his weight. He gestured to the other seat. "Sit." Garrett stayed standing. "What's up?" Vince leaned back, laced his fingers over his stomach. "You've been busy this week." "That's kind of the point," Garrett said. "Cars come in broke, they leave working. System seems sound." Vince smiled thin, eyes flat. "Funny." "Yeah, about that. I was going over last month's inspection numbers." He grabbed a clipboard, flipped through pages with exaggerated care. "You failed 23 vehicles last month, Garrett." 23. Garrett shrugged. "They weren't safe. One had a cracked taillight. On a work van with bald tires and a rotted brake line," Garrett said. "We both know that's not the one that flagged you." Silence stretched between them. Out in the bay, an impact gun rattled, then stopped. The radio switched songs. Someone laughed too loudly and immediately cut it off. Vince tapped the clipboard with his pen. "You know what happens when you fail that many inspections? People get pissed. They go to other shops. They leave bad reviews online. They call corporate. Numbers start to look ugly. Or," Garrett said calmly, "we keep people from dying on I-84 because their brakes give out at 60 miles an hour." Vince's jaw twitched. "You think you're some kind of hero? You change oil and rotate tires in Bristol, Connecticut, man. This ain't the space program. Garrett's chest tightened. He pictured twisted metal on the highway, imagined Nora in the back seat of a car he'd cleared because the boss wanted better numbers. "What are you asking me to do, Vince?" he said, even though he already knew. Vince tossed the clipboard onto the desk like he was done pretending. "I'm asking you to be a team player. We don't have to fail every borderline case. We give people a list, tell them what to fix next time. We pass the inspection, keep them happy, keep the money flowing. Everybody wins. Everybody except the family that doesn't walk away from a crash," Garrett said. Vince's eyes narrowed. "There it is. That little high horse you ride in on every morning." He pushed himself up out of the chair, closed the distance between them until Garrett could smell coffee and cheap cologne and the faint sourness of stress sweat. "You think I don't care about safety? I care about keeping this place open. I care about 10 guys out there feeding their families. I care about not having corporate crawl up my back because Mr. Perfect here fails everything that makes his conscience twitch." Garrett's fingers dug into the rag in his hand. He stared past Vince, through the glass, at the Silverado hovering on the lift. Solid. Predictable. Fixable. "I'm not putting my name on a form that says a car is safe when it's not," he said. "You want someone to look the other way, find somebody else." Something in Vince's expression hardened. The last bit of fake friendliness burned off, leaving something raw underneath: resentment, insecurity, all the stuff he never said out loud. "You think the customers come here for Hawthorne Automotive?" he asked quietly. "They come here for you. Ask for Garrett, he'll take care of you. You built yourself a little fan club. Makes it real easy for you to forget who signs your checks." Garrett met his gaze. "They come here because they trust you're not cutting corners." Vince snorted. "No, they trust you're not cutting corners. That's the problem." He walked back to the desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a small stack of inspection forms. He flipped one around and slid it across the surface. "Here," he said. 02 Civic. Ladies on a fixed income. Can't afford a full brake job. Rotors are worn but not swapping today or die worn. You pass it, note the issue, tell her to come back in a month. Simple. Kind. Human. Garrett skimmed the form. He remembered the car. Remembered the soft pedal, the shutter under his boot when he tested the brakes at 30 miles an hour. The woman's hands shaking on the countertop when she pulled out cash, every bill looking like it hurt to spend. "It didn't stop straight," he said. "She hits a wet patch, that car's going into oncoming traffic." "You always have a story," Vince snapped. "Always some scenario where you get to be the only thing between tragedy and safety. Newsflash, man, sometimes a worn rotor is just a worn rotor." He jabbed a finger at the form. "You pass it, maybe she gets another 6 months. She trusts us. She tells her friends. Business stays good. Or you fail it, she goes to some hole-in-the-wall down the road where they'll slap on junkyard parts and send her out anyway. At least here we'd be watching it." Garrett set the form down. "I'm not changing it." The office seemed to shrink. Vince stared at him for 3 long seconds, then nodded once. "Slow, okay." He opened the door and stepped out into the bay, voice rising to cut through the shop's clatter. "Hey. Everybody listen up." Tools went quiet. The radio dropped to background noise. Heads popped up from under hoods. Garrett stayed where he was, just inside the office doorway, rag still in his hand. Vince hooked his thumbs in his belt loops, turning in a slow circle to see everyone. "You know I don't like making scenes," he lied. "But sometimes you gotta be clear." He pointed at Garrett without looking at him. "Garrett Hayes is done here. Effective immediately. Turn in your shirts, your keys, whatever. You're fired, man. Pack your stuff and get off my property." The words hit harder than they sounded. Fired. In front of the crew. In front of the kid at the counter whose eyes went wide. In front of Troy, who suddenly found something very interesting on his boots. In front of Miguel, who watched with his jaw clenched and said nothing. Garrett's face burned. His heart pounded so loud he couldn't hear the radio anymore. For a second, his vision tunneled, the shop narrowing to Vince's smug face and the door beyond it. He could argue. He could throw the inspection forms back in Vince's face. He could tell everyone exactly why he'd been fired, make sure they knew this wasn't about incompetence but about not lying. Instead, he folded the rag in half, then in half again. His hands were steady. "Can I at least finish the Silverado?" he asked, voice even. Vince laughed once, hard. "Nah. We'll have someone else do it. Wouldn't want you failing the lift for being emotionally unstable or some heroic reason." A couple of guys looked away, ashamed for him or for themselves. Nobody spoke up. Garrett walked to his locker. The metal door stuck like always. He thumped the side panel in just the right place and it popped open. Inside, his old toolbox, a faded picture of Nora taped to the metal, a half-empty pack of gum. He took the picture and the gum. Left the toolbox. When he turned back, the bay had already moved on. Someone cranked the radio a little louder. An impact gun rattled to life. Work resumed because work had to. Garrett walked past Vince without another word. Past the counter kid who tried to meet his eyes and failed. Past the customer in the waiting room flipping through a 3-year-old magazine, unaware anything had changed. The late morning sun hit him like a slap as he stepped outside. Cold, bright, unforgiving. He took one breath. Then another, then he started walking, not knowing that a few hours later, those same hands that refused to sign a lie would be the ones every helicopter in 3 states was waiting on. If you were in that shop, would you have spoken up, or stayed quiet like everyone else? Let me know in the comments. Gravel grinds under Garrett's boots as he stumbles out of the helicopter, legs rubbery, ears still ringing from the flight. The wind bites colder here, sharper, carrying the smell of jet fuel and de-icing fluid instead of exhaust and cheap takeout. Floodlights wash the tarmac in harsh white, turning everything flat and exposed. Hanscom Air Force Base is all angles and motion, trucks moving, ground crew signaling, engines whining somewhere in the distance. Garrett feels like he's walked into somebody else's life. His grease-stained work jacket and worn jeans don't belong among uniforms and high-vis vests and badges clipped to clean shirts. "Right this way, Mr. Hayes, the contractor." Reed, he'd finally introduced himself as, says, tilting his head toward a squat gray building a short walk from the landing pad. "We're behind schedule already." "Behind schedule? Behind what schedule?" Garrett's pulse kicks harder. He forces his legs to keep up, every step reminding him he's very far from Bristol, from Nora's bus stop, from anything that makes sense. A pair of airmen at the door glance at Reed, then at Garrett, then press the buzzer. The lock clicks. They step into a corridor that smells like coffee, printer toner, and stress. Phones ring behind closed doors. Voices murmur, low and urgent. "Stay with me," Reed says without looking back. "You're about to meet some people who have been arguing about you all morning." Garrett almost laughs. There's nothing about today that's funny, but his brain needs somewhere to put the disbelief. Arguing about him. As if he's a line item on some agenda. "Hey. I'm really glad you're still here. Real quick, if you're watching this while doing something else, what are you up to right now? Cooking, driving, lying in bed? Drop it in the comments so I know where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to hit subscribe if this story has you hooked." Now, let's keep going. They turn into a conference room that looks ripped straight from a movie. Long table, screen on the wall, a dozen people already seated or standing, all of them stopping mid-conversation when Garrett walks in. Every eye goes to him. Closest to the screen sits a black woman in her 50s with close-cropped gray hair and glasses hanging on a chain. She wears no uniform, just a navy blazer and the kind of expression that says she's used to being the one in charge. Beside her, a man in an FAA badge taps a pen so fast it's almost a blur. On the far side, a tall woman in a med-flight jacket grips a coffee cup like it's the only thing holding her together. Reed clears his throat. "Everyone, this is Garrett Hayes." The name changes the air. The woman in the blazer stands. "Mr. Hayes," she says, stepping forward, extending a hand. "I'm Dana Caldwell, Director of Operations for Horizon Vanguard Systems. I'm the one who signed off on the acquisition of the company that used your design. I owe you, quite a lot, it seems. Garrett takes her hand. Her grip is firm, warm, steady. His own hand feels colder than it should. I was told you needed help, he says, because he has no idea what else to say. Dana nods once, then gestures to the table. Sit. We don't have the luxury of a slow ramp-up, so I'm going to give you the short version, then we'll answer questions as we go. Garrett lowers himself into a chair near the screen. Reed takes a spot by the door, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room like he's still on perimeter duty. Dana taps a remote. The screen comes alive with an image Garrett recognizes instantly, a turbine housing, exploded view, annotations floating around it like orbiting planets. This is your redesign, Dana says. Based on collapsed records and archived emails, you took a system that was underperforming and prone to catastrophic failure and gave it a secondary containment path and a stress relief channel that reduced failure risk by over 70%. You did that in, what, 6 weeks? I didn't clock it, Garrett says quietly. I just fixed what didn't make sense. The FAA man snorts. Fixed what didn't make sense. You realize our guys have been chasing this for months with full teams and software that costs more than your entire shop, and that's your explanation. Warren, Dana warns without looking at him. Then, to Garrett, what he means is, you did something important, and the documentation we inherited is incomplete. She clicks again. New image. A photo of a helicopter, white and blue, medical cross on the side, sits on a pad, rotors still, sun just rising behind it. The words, Medflight Unit 12, grounded, glow in red beneath it. As of this afternoon, every air medical unit in our network is grounded, Dana says. That means no airlift for rural trauma, no rapid transport for organ transplants, no emergency response when time is literally the difference between life and death. She flips through photos, news choppers, police helicopters, Coast Guard birds on a ship deck. Everyone carries a red, out of service, tag. This is what's offline because we don't understand why your fix is now failing. Somewhere between what you designed and what ended up in the field, something changed. A supplier swap. A material tolerance. A manufacturing shortcut. We don't know. Garrett leans forward, eyes scanning the schematics on screen. He points before he realizes his hand is moving. That stress relief channel, he says. That's not the geometry I drew. The curve's wrong. Sharp angle there, that's a stress riser. Who changed that? Dana clicks again. Zooms in. The angle is obvious now, a little corner where there should be a smooth bend. That's what we're trying to find out, she says. What we do know is that under repeated thermal cycling, microfractures are forming right here. She taps the screen. Nothing you could see on a casual inspection. But under load? It's a crack waiting for the right vibration to finish the job. The Medflight rep finally speaks, voice low and tight. We've already had one near miss. Pilot heard a pitch change mid-flight, got a warning light, managed to set down in a field. Post-landing inspection found a fracture halfway through the housing wall. If that had gone full failure over Boston, she doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't have to. Images flash uninvited in Garrett's mind, blades ripping loose, shrapnel, fire, bodies. He swallows hard. What do you need from me? He asks. Dana studies him for a beat, as if measuring how much weight to place on his shoulders. We need you to help us rebuild the original intent, she says. Walk us through what you did, why you did it, what you refused to compromise on. Then help us figure out exactly how far the field units have drifted from that. We can't just ground everything for months. We need a patch, a mitigation, something we can implement fast that actually works. The FAA man re-enters the conversation, flipping open a folder. And we need an answer I can take to my superiors that doesn't sound like some mechanic in Connecticut says it's fine now. No offense. None taken, Garrett says. I wouldn't trust that either. Dana's mouth twitches. First hint of a smile. Good. Then let's get you in front of the hardware. She clicks off the screen. The room brightens slightly as the projection fades. Mr. Hayes, she says, welcome to the part of your life where nothing you do will ever feel small again. Garrett stands on unsteady legs that he has no idea that right now, miles away, a man who once called him boss is staring at a locked door and a sign that might end his world. That if you were Garrett, sitting in that room with all those eyes on you, what's the first question you would ask? Drop it in the comments, and hit that subscribe button with notifications on so you don't miss what's about to happen on the ground back in Bristol. This story isn't just getting bigger, it's getting closer to home. The lock on Hawthorne Automotive's front door doesn't usually stick, but today it fights Derek Monroe like it knows what's coming. He jams the key in, twists harder than he needs to, and the mechanism finally gives with a metallic click that scrapes his nerves raw. That he tells himself it's just a surprise audit. Corporate does this sometimes, shows up unannounced, counts filters, checks paperwork, reminds everyone who really owns the logo on the sign. But corporate doesn't arrive in black SUVs with government plates. Corporate doesn't walk past him like he's furniture. The first man through the door flashes an ID so fast Derek barely catches the letters, FAA. The second carries a hard case and looks around the lobby like he's expecting something to explode. Behind them, a woman in business heels and a winter coat steps in, eyes sweeping the room once, taking in the fake plant, the coffee-stained counter, the scuffed chairs. Morning, Derek says, forcing a grin. Can I help you folks? I'll be right with you, just gotta, Mr. Monroe? The woman cuts in, voice crisp, yeah, that's me. Owner, manager, everything in between. He laughs weakly at his own joke. Nobody joins him. She offers a quick, professional handshake. I'm Agent Collins, Federal Aviation Administration. This is Inspector Lane. We're here regarding vehicle inspections performed at this location over the last 12 months. The floor seems to slide an inch sideways under Derek's boots. FAA. We're a car shop. Closest we get to planes is when they fly over on the way to Bradley. We're aware, Collins says. We're also aware that this location did contracted inspection work for Horizon Vanguard Systems from 2019 to 2021 as part of their ground support fleet compliance program. Derek blinks. We rotated some tires on their trucks, sure. That contract ended years ago. This some kind of back tax thing? Because I got a guy, this isn't about taxes, Lane says flatly. He flips open his case, pulls out a stack of forms, inspection reports, printed and highlighted. Derek recognizes the format immediately. Hawthorne letterhead. His shop's address. His name on the bottom of some. On others, a different name. Garrett Hayes. A slow burn starts in Derek's stomach. We've identified discrepancies between reported inspections and the actual condition of several vehicles tied to emergency response support, Collins says. Specifically, vehicles used to transport and maintain critical aviation components. We're here to determine whether those discrepancies are due to negligence, incompetence, or something worse. Hold up, Derek says, palms up. We passed every audit you people sent. Our numbers are solid. Any issues, that's on the parts suppliers, not us. Numbers can be adjusted, Lane murmurs, flipping to a particular page. Take this one. Fleet Vehicle HV-22. Inspection failed by Technician Hayes on March 12. Brake system unsafe, do not operate. Same vehicle marked pass by you, Mr. Monroe, 2 days later. No record of a brake job in between. The burn in Derek's stomach turns to ice. That's just that. Look, sometimes these guys are too cautious. They fail things that don't need failing. Customer comes back yelling, threatening to sue, saying another shop passed them. I step in, use my judgment. That's why I'm the boss. Collins's gaze doesn't soften. Your judgment put unfit vehicles on the road in support of aircraft carrying human lives, Mr. Monroe. Aircraft that are now grounded because of a systemic failure we are still trying to understand. Derek laughs again, higher this time. You're telling me some brake job in Bristol is why you got planes sitting on the ground? Come on. Seems like you're looking for a scapegoat. We're looking for patterns, Lane says. And so far, every pattern leads back here. He pulls another report. Here's another. Hayes fails a truck for frame corrosion near a load. Point. You pass it. 6 months later, that same truck suffers a structural failure during loading. 2 workers injured. You know what they told the investigators? Our shop said it was fine. You remember signing that? Derek's mouth goes dry. He remembers. He remembers the phone call. He remembers telling them it must have been a fluke, that was a judgment call, he says weakly. You gotta understand, if we fail every little thing, nobody can afford to fix their vehicles. They go somewhere cheaper, somewhere dirtier. At least here, we tried to keep an eye on stuff. Mr. Hayes tried, Collins says softly. You overruled him. Repeatedly. She nods toward the bay doors. We'll need full access to your service records, inspection logs, employee files, and security footage. Effective immediately, this facility is under investigation. You may not perform any further state or federally regulated inspections until this matter is resolved. Derek feels the words like body blows. You're shutting me down. You can't just walk in here and, a second SUV door slams outside. Through the glass, Derek sees another group walking up, 2 men in suits, 1 woman in a Horizon Vanguard jacket. She walks with purpose, like someone who knows exactly where she's going. One of the suits steps in, looks around, spots Collins. Agent Collins, he says, nodding. I'm Mark Delaney, Horizon Vanguard Legal. Appreciate you letting us coordinate this visit. He turns to Derek, extends a hand that's more of a formality than an offer. Mr. Monroe. We met briefly when we reviewed vendor contracts last year. You might not remember. Derek doesn't. He shakes the hand anyway, because he's on autopilot now. What's Horizon doing here, he asks. I told your people we'd fixed all the minor issues. We did the recall work. Whatever you're fishing for, we're clean. Delaney's smile is thin and sharp. We've already pulled your records from our end. Internal emails. Invoice trails. Someone here billed us for work that doesn't match the inspection notes. Work that, in many cases, wasn't actually done. That's not, Derek starts, then stops. There's no good way to finish that sentence. The Horizon rep steps forward. We came here first for a different reason, she says. We were looking for someone you employed. Or, rather, used to employ. A technician named Garrett Hayes. Hearing the name out loud, in this context, makes Derek's skin prickle. He's gone, Derek says quickly. Fired him. Guy thought he knew better than the business. Failed every car he touched. Was costing us money. Collins and Delaney exchange a look that's almost disbelief. You fired him, Delaney repeats. When? A couple hours ago, Derek says. Why, he got you in trouble too. The Horizon rep's jaw tightens. Mr. Hayes's work is at the center of the only design that's preventing a complete shutdown of our emergency response fleet. We've been trying to locate him for months. His original redesign is the backbone of our safety protocol. She lets that sink in for a beat. Your problem employee is the reason hundreds of people are still alive today, she adds. The shop feels suddenly too small, too loud, and too quiet at the same time. In the bay beyond, someone revs an engine, unaware their job might not exist tomorrow. Derek feels something sour crawl up his throat. Look, I didn't know if he was such a genius, why was he turning wrenches here for $22 an hour? Because people like you are very good at overlooking people like him, the Horizon rep says. And now, we're all paying for it. Collins turns back to Derek, snapping on a pair of blue gloves. Mr. Monroe, until this investigation is complete, Hawthorne Automotive is suspended from all inspection activities. You may remain open for basic repairs, pending further findings. But if we discover evidence that your actions contributed to endangering aircraft operations, she doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't have to. Derek grabs the edge of the counter to steady himself. The room seems to tilt. The logo on the wall behind the desk, Hawthorne Automotive, family owned, community trusted, suddenly looks like a joke someone forgot to laugh at that he thinks of Garrett's face when he fired him. The way the man didn't argue. The toolbox left behind, where is he now? Derek hears himself ask, surprising even himself with the question. Delaney glances at his watch. If things went according to plan, he says. He's on his way into a secure facility, about to be handed a problem some of our best engineers couldn't solve. Derek swallows hard. The problem he created here, in this shop, with a pen and a signature and a decision he thought nobody would ever examine too closely, that one's only just starting to catch up. If you were one of the workers at Hawthorne watching all this unfold, what would you be thinking right now? About your boss, about Garrett, about your own choices? Let me know in the comments. And if you're still here, make sure you're subscribed with the bell on so you don't miss the next part of this story, and so more people can find it, feel it, and maybe rethink the power of their own decisions. The conference room door swings shut behind Garrett, sealing him inside with a dozen pairs of eyes and a table covered in schematics, laptops, and coffee cups stained with desperation. Dana Caldwell points to a rolling whiteboard where someone's already sketched the turbine housing in marker, lines precise but frantic. Start here, she says, tapping the stress riser angle. Tell us what you saw in 2019 that nobody else did. Garrett approaches the board, fingers itching for a marker. The room smells like dry erase fumes and recycled air, the kind that's been filtered and refiltered until it carries no memory of outside. He picks up the black marker, uncaps it, the chemical tang sharp against the staleness that he draws over the existing line, a smooth S-curve where the original shows a harsh right angle. This, he says, voice gaining strength as the shape emerges under his hand. Heat cycles make metal expand and contract. Sharp corners trap stress. Smooth flow lets it dissipate. Heads nod around the table. The FAA guy, Warren, leans forward. Simple. Why didn't manufacturing follow that? Garrett sets the marker down, turns to face them. They probably did what was cheaper. Or what their tooling could handle. Or what some engineer approved because it looked good on paper. Dana slides a tablet across the table. Show us the rest. He swipes through archived files, the screen lighting his face blue. His notes from 7 years ago, handwritten scans, emails to a now-defunct address, fill the display. Secondary containment, he says, circling a chamber on screen. Original design had one path for oil flow. If it clogged under pressure, you got a blowout. I added a bypass that only activated if primary pressure exceeded safe limits. The medflight rep whistles low. That's what's cracking now. Bypass valve sticks open during thermal expansion, sends oil where it shouldn't go. Garrett nods, the pieces clicking in his head like a stubborn bolt finally turning. Not just that. Look at the mounting lugs. He zooms in. They shortened them. Saved material, I guess. But that puts torque stress right on the housing wall. Silence falls. Papers shuffle. Someone mutters, son of a, under their breath. Reed, still by the door, shifts his weight. So it's a cascade. Manufacturing shortcuts compound over cycles until it fails, Garrett finishes. Mid-flight, full load, no warning. Dana rubs her temples. Can we fix it? Field modification. Something we can roll out in 48 hours. Garrett stares at the board, mind racing through tolerances, materials, the brutal reality of what happens when you try to patch a helicopter in the field. Maybe. Redesign the lug geometry, reinforce the housing wall with a sleeve. But you'd need every unit inspected, torn down to the housing. Warren snorts. That's every bird grounded another week. We're talking organ transplants dying on the table. The weight settles on Garrett's shoulders. He thinks of Nora, drawing horses while the world waits on him to remember how to save it. Show me the actual hardware, he says. They wheel it in on a cart, an actual turbine housing, fresh from a grounded medflight unit. The metal gleams under the fluorescence, but up close, Garrett sees the truth. Hairline fracture spiderwebbing from that damn corner, oil residue baked black in the seams that he pulls on gloves, the latex snapping against his wrists. His hands move on instinct, tracing seams, testing mounts, the familiar rhythm cutting through the panic. This isn't just fatigue, he says after a minute. Look here. He points to a faint stamp near the base. Aftermarket supplier. Not the original fab. Dana peers close. Switched vendors post-acquisition. Cost cutting. Garrett grabs a flashlight, angles it into the bypass chamber. And they used a different alloy. Cheaper casting. See the porosity? Tiny voids glitter like stars in hell. That's where the cracks start. The room erupts in questions. He answers mechanically, mind half in 2019, half here. Back then, Horizon was a scrappy startup, desperate for a prototype fix. He'd worked nights in their rented hangar, Nora asleep in the truck with a blanket over the windows, while he rebuilt engines that coughed and died that he'd refused their full-time offer. Need flexibility, he'd said. Kid to raise. They'd paid him cash, no contract, no credit. He'd walked away clean. Now that choice echoes back, amplified, Mr. Hayes. Dana's voice pulls him back. You okay? He blinks, nods. Yeah. Sleeve the housing, upgrade the lugs, spec the original alloy for new parts. Test under max cycle loads. That holds. Warren scribbles furiously. Timeline. 24 hours per unit if you parallel the shops. Prioritize medflight. Dana stares at him, something like awe in her eyes. You just saved our asses. Garrett shakes his head. I just remembered what I already knew. His phone buzzes in his pocket, first time since landing. He pulls it out. Text from an unknown number, Nora safe with Grandma. Call when you can. Our relief floods him, short-lived. Because the fractures he's staring at, they're just the start. What's the one choice from your past you're glad stayed quiet until now? Share in the comments, your story might inspire someone else's breakthrough. Subscribe and hit the bell. The pressure's just building. Back in Bristol, the bay doors of Hawthorne Automotive hang half open, letting cold afternoon air mix with the smell of motor oil and stale coffee. Derek Monroe paces the lobby, phone pressed to his ear, voice low but sharp. Yeah, I get it's bad, but you're talking shutdown. I've run this place clean for 15 years, the voice on the other end cuts him off. Derek stops pacing, face paling. Suspended? For how long? I got payroll Friday, man. Employees with families. He listens, jaw working. What do you mean, full cooperation? They were FAA. Horizon lawyers. What the hell does aviation care about brake jobs? More listening. Derek's free hand balls into a fist. Garrett Hayes. That nobody. You're basing this on him. He hangs up without saying goodbye, stares at the phone like it betrayed him. The counter kid, Jamal, pretends to organize paperwork but keeps glancing over. Yo, boss, Jamal says finally. They coming back. Derek wheels on him. Don't call me boss right now. And yeah, they're coming back. With warrants probably. Jamal whistles low. For real. Over inspections. Over Hayes being some kind of secret genius apparently. Derek spits the words. Fired the guy this morning and now the feds are tearing through our records because he wouldn't sign off on my calls. Troy pokes his head in from the bay. Heard that. You think he snitched? Derek laughs bitter. Garrett? Nah. Guy's too straight to play games. That's why he's a problem. Miguel joins them, wiping hands on a rag. What now? We still working? For basic stuff, Derek says. No inspections. No fleet work. Just oil changes and wipers till this blows over. The men exchange looks. Troy shrugs. Kinda feels like it's already blown. Derek's phone buzzes again. Unknown number. He answers. Yeah. Mr. Monroe, this is Agent Collins. We need you to come down to the station. We've got questions about specific overrides you signed. Derek's stomach drops. Station. Like police station. Precisely. Bring your attorney if you have one. Click that he lowers the phone slow. The shop goes dead quiet, Jamal breaks it. Boss. Derek doesn't correct him this time. Shut the bay doors. We're closing early. 2 hours later, Derek sits in a sterile interview room, hands folded tight on a metal table. Collins enters with a folder thick as a phone book. Walk us through this, she says, sliding photos across, wrecked trucks, injury reports, time-stamped exactly after his approvals. I made judgment calls, Derek repeats for the 5th time. Kept the place running. Collins taps a photo of twisted frame rails. Judgment calls that put defective equipment in front of aircraft parts. Parts that ended up in helicopters now failing midair. Derek's mouth opens, closes. I didn't know, you knew enough to override the one guy who did. She leans in. Where's Hayes now? Derek swallows. Fired him. Walking home probably. Collins smiles thin. Actually, he's redesigning the very system your shortcuts endangered. And when his name comes up clean, and it will, guess whose looks dirty? The door opens. A uniform pokes in. Ma'am. Update from Hanscom. They've got a fix. Prototype testing starts at 0600. Collins nods, stands. You're free to go, Mr. Monroe. For now. But obstruction of safety investigations carries federal weight. Derek stumbles out into the parking lot, dusk settling cold. His truck sits alone, Hawthorne sticker peeling on the bumper that he thinks of Garrett walking away that morning, toolbox left behind like it didn't matter. Now Derek wonders if he just lost everything chasing the wrong kind of win. Garrett's hands ache from marker ink and metal shavings as he steps out of the test chamber, the door hissing shut behind him. The prototype housing gleams under the lab lights, his sleeve reinforcement holding firm after 6 brutal thermal cycles, lugs biting clean into the test mount without a whisper of flex. Dana meets him in the corridor, tablet in hand, face lit by the screen's glow. It passed, she says, voice tight with the kind of relief that comes after staring down disaster. Stress readings nominal. Horizons greenlighting production. The corridor smells of ozone and hot machinery, fluorescent hum steady overhead. Garrett nods, wiping sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. His work jacket's gone stiff with dried oil from the teardown. Timeline, he asks. First batch sleeves off the line by 0400. Med-flight team standing by for installs. She pauses, studying him. You look like hell, Hayes. When's the last time you slept? Garrett checks his phone, 9:47 p.m. Nora's probably in bed, Grandma's house quiet. Don't remember. Come on. Dana gestures down the hall. Debrief room. Food, at least. The room holds a conference table piled with sandwiches, energy drinks, printouts. Warren's there, FAA badge crooked, arguing with a Horizon engineer over certification language. They quiet when Garrett enters. Dana slides him a turkey sub. Eat. Then we talk next steps. Garrett unwraps it mechanically, takes a bite. Bread chews dry in his mouth. Next steps. She sits across, tablet down. The fix works. But it's reactive. We need you to consult on redesigning the full production line. Permanent solution. Garrett sets the sandwich down. Consult. Like, full-time. Partner level, Dana says. Equity stake. Travel for field validations. Salary that starts with a 7. Benefits. Relocation package if you want it. The words hang heavy. Partner. Equity. 7 figures. Numbers that don't compute with his life. He thinks of Bristol mornings, packing Nora's lunch, the school bus rumble, her wave from the top step. Evenings fixing the apartment's leaky faucet with duct tape and prayer. No travel. No uncertainty. What's the commitment, he asks. Dana's honest. Minimum 2 years on contract. Field time, 2 weeks a month minimum. Conference calls daily. Test flights. Supplier audits. 2 weeks a month. 14 missed dinners. 14 bedtime stories read by grandma. The horse drawings piling up on the fridge, and signed. And if I say no? Garrett hears himself ask. Dana blinks, surprised. Warren looks up sharp. You walk, she says slowly. We implement your patch, credit you publicly. But the systemic issues? They'll creep back. Another cost cut, another vendor swap. 5 years from now, we're here again. Garrett's pulse thuds. The sub sits untouched. He pictures Nora's face, trusting, small, waiting for Dad to come home like always. Give me the night, he says. Dana nods. Fair. But helicopters don't wait. Reed appears in the doorway. Transport's ready. Bristol or hotel? Garrett stands. Bristol. The SUV ride back blurs, highway lights streaking, phone buzzing with voicemails he ignores. His mind churns, safety net or safety first. Genius pay or girl time, home looms. The choice no longer feels like opportunity. It feels like loss. Nora's bedroom door creaks open at 11:14 p.m., spilling hall light across stuffed animals and horse posters. Grandma Ellis sits on the bed's edge, braids pulled back, reading glasses perched low as she turns pages in a picture book about a girl and her pony. Garrett pauses in the doorway, bag dropping silent by his feet. The room smells like baby shampoo and the lavender spray Grandma insists calms nightmares. Nora looks up first, eyes wide. Daddy? Hey, Bug. He crosses the room in 3 steps, sits beside her. Small arms wrap his neck, warm and trusting. Sorry I'm late. Grandma closes the book soft. Helicopters, they said. School called me. What's this about? Work stuff, Garrett says, holding Nora close. Her heartbeat thumps steady against his chest. Complicated. Nora pulls back, studies him. The men said you're important. Like a superhero. Garrett chuckles rough. Nah. Just fix things that break. Grandma stands, hand on his shoulder. Kitchen when you're done. We talk. Alone with Nora, Garrett tucks hair behind her ear. Missed you today. Missed you more. She frowns. The principal lady was nice but I wanted you. Guilt twists sharp. I know. Won't happen again. Her eyes search his face. Promise? He hesitates a beat too long. Promise I'll always come back. She yawns, nestles into pillows. Garrett kisses her forehead, lingers. The weight of Dana's offer presses heavier now. 2 weeks gone a month means promises broken in fractions. I in the kitchen, Grandma waits with tea steaming on the table. Her face, lined from raising 3 kids alone after Grandpa passed, holds no judgment. Just knowing. Helicopters ain't work stuff, Garrett, she says. Spill. He sits, hands wrapping the mug's heat. Words tumble out, the firing, the choppers, the design from 7 years back, the fractures waiting to kill. Grandma listens, sips slow. And now they want you full-time? Big money? Yeah. She sets her mug down deliberate. What did your mama always say? Shoes that fit today pinch tomorrow. Garrett rubs his eyes. It's not just money, Ma. It's purpose. Saving lives. Whose lives matter more? Strangers in the sky or that girl sleeping down the hall? Grandma leans forward. You been her whole world since day one. Don't let helicopters change that. He thinks of the test chamber, the cracks he sealed. Thinks of Nora's horse drawings, and signed. What if I can do both, he asks, quiet. Grandma shakes her head. Nobody does both perfect. Choose what you sleep with. The clock ticks. Midnight passes. Garrett stares at the steam curling off his tea, decisions solidifying like cooling metal. Morning will demand an answer. But Nora's soft snores down the hall already gave it. Dawn creeps gray through the apartment blinds, painting Nora's crayons across the living room floor. Garrett sits at the kitchen table, phone in hand, Dana's number pulled up but unsent. Coffee goes cold untouched. He replays the night, Nora's hug, Grandma's words, the fractures under his fingertips. Opportunity knocks, but it rattles the door to everything he built. The phone buzzes first. Read. Hayes. Decision time. Fleet stacking up. First installs in 3 hours. Garrett exhales slow. Tell Dana it's a no. Silence, then, you sure? This is once in a lifetime. Exactly. He hangs up. Nora pads in, rubbing eyes, stuffed horse dangling from one hand. Morning, Daddy. Morning, Bug. He scoops her up, her weight grounding him. Pancakes. She nods enthusiastic. Batter hits the pan, sizzling familiar. Syrup pours thick. Laughter fills the cracks where doubt lived. Later, door buzzer. Envelope slides under the door, no return address, Horizon seal embossed. Garrett opens it careful. Check inside, 6 figures, consulting retainer, no strings. Note clipped, for the lives already saved. Call if you change your mind. Dana. He folds it away. Not temptation. Validation. Derek shows up at noon, pale, knocking hesitant. Heard about the choppers. About everything. Garrett blocks the door half open. Nora plays behind him, oblivious. Saw the shutdown notice. Derek mumbles. My fault. Shouldn't have, you know. Garrett waits. Shop start next week. Maybe longer. Derek shifts. You need your toolbox. Still in the locker. Yeah. Garrett steps aside. Come get coffee. Tell me what happened. Derek enters slow, eyes on Nora drawing. Sits heavy. Spills it. FAA raid, overrides exposed, Horizon tying it to aircraft risk. You saved more than engines, Derek says finally. Oh you. Garrett pours coffee black. Nobody owes. Just do right next time. Derek nods, leaves lighter somehow. Evening falls. Garrett tucks Nora in, reads the horse book. Her eyes droop. Content that I and the quiet. He unfolds the note again. Equity. Travel. Purpose, but the crayons on the floor. That's legacy. Phone lights, unknown caller. He answers. Mr. Hayes. Voice female, official. This is NTSB. Regarding Horizon incident. We need your full design history. There's complications. Garrett freezes. Complications. Someone buried your original schematics. Intentionally. And the vendor who cut corners. They supplied parts to military contracts. The line crackles. Truth dawns cold. Walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning. What's the hardest no you've ever said, and was it worth it? Drop your story in the comments to inspire the next viewer facing the same choice. Subscribe, notifications on, the buried secrets are surfacing.